Hello. In this in-class activity, we are going to learn how to express data sets in the form of graphs. In this first question, we have the result of a survey of food preference from 20 people. We ask them what is their most favorable food. Now, food preference is a categorical variable. Many times we can use quantitative method or graph to deal with categorical variable. And here we learn how to do it. The first step is to express food preference in the form of a frequency in a frequency distribution table like this. In the first column, we have different kind of food. In the second column, we have frequency. We basically tally how many people prefer different kind of food. For example, in this data set, the first person prefer Italian food, so we have a number 1 there. Second person prefer fast food, 1 person fast food. Third person, the Chinese food, 1 person Chinese food. The fourth person, home cooking, 1 home cooking. The number 5, Chinese again. Now Chinese become 2. Next one, number 6, fast food. So we have 2 people now prefer fast food. So we do this for all 20 people. So eventually we end up having we fill up the second column frequency. We also add up the total frequency 20. Now we need to calculate relative frequency that is expressed in percentage, and this is calculated by using frequency divided by the total frequency 20. For example, the Italian food, there are 4 people who prefer Italian food. 4 divided by 20 is 0.2. 0.2 times 100 give us 20. So we have 20 here. That means 20% people prefer Italian food. So for Mexican food, 1 divided by 20 is 0.05 times 100 give us 5. So 5% people prefer Mexican food. We do this for all food categories. We end up having this second column filled up, which add up to 100%. Next one, the next column is the cumulative frequency. This is the total number of frequency up to this particular category. Okay. For the first category, Italian food, it's just the frequency itself. 4 people prefer Italian food. For the next category, Mexican food, we need to calculate the total frequency up to Mexican food. And this is all the previous, all the frequency for all the previous category plus the frequency for Mexican food. The total frequency for all the previous categories is simply the frequency for Italian food 4 plus frequency for Mexican food 1. So you have 4 plus 1 is 5. For next categories, fast food. So cumulative frequency for fast food is the total frequency up to the category of fast food. So it is the you combine the total frequency for all the previous categories 5 with the frequency for fast food. Now the frequency for all previous categories is 5. Italian 4 plus 1 Mexico, and you have this 5, and plus the frequency for fast food, and you have 5 plus 5 is 10. For home cooking, this is the total number of frequency up to home cooking, and you obtain this cumulative frequency by combining the total frequency for all the previous categories and the frequency for home cooking. Now, total frequency for all the previous categories is 10, and 10 plus the frequency for home cooking 3, you have 13. So you do this for all categories, eventually you obtain this column of cumulative frequency. Okay. Now, last column, we need to calculate cumulative relative frequency. There are two ways to do it. One way to do it is simply use a relative frequency, add up to obtain cumulative relative frequency. For example, for the first category, the cumulative relative frequency is just 20%, is self. For the next category, Mexican, is simply relative frequency of Italian food plus relative frequency for Mexican food is 25%. For the next categories is you combine all the relative frequency up to the fast food category. So you have 20 plus 5 plus 25, you have 50. So this is one way to calculate cumulative relative frequency. Another way to calculate the cumulative relative frequency is simply to use cumulative frequency here in this column divided by the total frequency. For example, the cumulative frequency up to home cooking is 13. 13 is divided by 20. You obtain 0.65. 0.65 times 100, you have 65. So you just, there are two ways to do it. So eventually, after you complete the calculation, you obtain cumulative relative frequency. Now we fill up this frequency distribution table. What we do next, we need to draw a bar chart that show the relative frequency distribution. Okay. Now, what we can do is you can use manually draw this bar chart. Alternatively, you can use Excel to draw a nice looking bar chart. What you can do is simply copy this table into Excel. Okay, let me copy the nice table into Excel. And this is the column that we need to draw a bar chart for. So therefore, we just highlight this, this column, relative frequency, and going to insert and bar chart here. See, now you see the 5 bars already. For a bar chart, you need to make sure that the horizontal axis is labeled with different food categories, like Italian food, Mexican food, also Chinese food. So you go right-click, select data. In this little window to the right-hand side half, you go to Edit, and here you highlight this column, the food, first column that has all the different food names. Okay, highlight that. Come back here, say OK. Okay. Now you see all these food names are shown up here. Okay. Also they show up in the horizontal axis. Now you need to give this chart a name. We simply call it food preference. Okay, food preference. We also need to label the horizontal axis and the vertical axis. Okay, you go to Add Chart Element. You add chart axis titles, horizontal axis, you change the title into just call it food, different kind of food. Okay, then you go back to add chart element. Now you add vertical axis title. You call it this percent, right? This is percent. Okay, this percent. Okay. Now you can just copy this chart into the field. Okay. When you do your assignment, you can copy this chart into a Word file and print it out to turn in. And here, okay, you can do some, basic process. You can change the font size, okay, to make it bigger. You can also change the position of the chart drawing area, and change the position of the label for vertical and horizontal axis. Okay, move this to the left a little bit, and you also can change the color of the bars. Okay, so now we have a complete bar chart for food preference. Make sure you understand that since the food preference is a categorical variable, all these bars, they should not be adjacent to each other. So between bars, there should be some gaps or distance. So this is the first question.